Alright, so tonight I went Uber driving in a pretty crappy area of Sarasota late at night, and I only got two passengers, bringing me a total of less than $20. That means that right now Uber driving late at night, even in dangerous neighborhoods in Sarasota, barely brings you to $13 an hour. I picked up this passenger right on 301 in Onico, and I took her to North Sarasota. From there, I headed into downtown, and it's pathetic to say that literally there was an hour period in the middle where I couldn't get a single Uber passenger. And it garnishes the question, what exactly is going on in Sarasota? When I first started Uber driving, you could get rides on a Sunday night at 4 in the morning in the rain. This place had nonstop life. But even today on a Tuesday, it wasn't even 1 a.m. yet, and it was already empty. Keep in mind that this is not the Sarasota I moved to 2.5 years ago, where even on a rainy Sunday night, there was people out and about. In fact, it has become somewhat like a ghost town. Usually the Snowbird season starts to pick up a little bit by December. Today is January the 8th, and it is still a ghost town out here. Even during the off season, it wouldn't get this bad. One of my strategies with Uber driving has been to drive late at night, because it seems like late at night, nobody wants to drive, so there's always Uber passengers. So the fact that I'm sitting here idly for an hour during the night is kind of strange to me, because at night there's always demand for passengers, especially now, January the 8th. By now, the city should be packed, and it's absolutely empty. And yes, it was a cold night. The temperature was in the 40s, but that didn't seem to deter people in the past in Florida. In fact, the colder it gets, the more people should want to be in Florida. I don't know the other people that live in the Sarasota area, what you guys think, but from my perspective, it is a complete ghost town out here, and I'm wondering what the crap is going on. Of course, we know we had the hurricanes, and yes, it is cold outside, and it is a weeknight, but none of that should matter. It is still Sarasota during the winter time. I don't even think it was this empty during coronavirus out here. I mean, it really does feel like a complete ghost town. And why? Why is it so empty? A lot of times when I upload these videos showing the cities in Florida empty, people get mad at me and they say that I'm a liar. Some people even say it's AI generated. But no, it's not AI generated. This is the truth. This is exactly what the streets of Sarasota look like right now, 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. Normally there would be people out here regardless of what day of the week it was. It could be a Sunday and there would be at least somebody doing something. Yes, it's cold weather. I know all the variables and all the factors that are at play here. Regardless, what's up with the Uber? I mean, in Florida during the wintertime, people come from up north and you get busier. But it's actually been slower in the last few weeks here in Florida than it has during the off season when absolutely everybody leaves the state. So there's definitely something going on in Florida that is very strange, and it's starting to affect people's wallets. Now, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but I've been on Uber for a while, and I can tell you I have never seen things this bad. And when I first started Uber driving, we used to have passengers from all over the world. It used to be predominantly Venezuelans, Mexicans, Guatemalans, but it seems like recently I am getting zero foreigners as Uber passengers. And while there are a lot of drivers that are foreigners as well, it is true that there's more passengers than drivers, so it seems like it really hasn't made a difference. The amount of drivers that we have in the area is just too many, and we're getting far too few passengers. And while I don't really depend on Uber, I do it just as a hobby on the side, I can really feel bad for the people who are out there right now, because it doesn't seem like they're making enough money to live in the Sarasota area. I couldn't wrap my mind around the idea of somebody who does this 60, 70 hours a week would make enough money to survive in this metropolitan area, because there just isn't enough money to be made. And I know it's not really something to get rich with, but when I first started Uber driving, you're consistently making $27 an hour, and that was just the bare minimum. But it really has been a lot worse than that. Like I said, tonight I averaged $13 an hour. I had two passengers the whole night, and then I finally quit. I said, what am I doing out here? I got one passenger in Onico, and I took them to North Sarasota. Then I drove through downtown Sarasota, and I even sat around waiting for over an hour until I said, you know what, this isn't worth it. I finally left downtown Sarasota and headed back to my house. and I got a passenger that was going from University all the way up to 64, and I took the ride just to do it. But if it hadn't been for that passenger, I would have averaged at something like $9 an hour. Now, I did have to pass up on 2 rides because they were like $3 rides that were 17 minutes away. And I'm just not going to drive that far for $3. It isn't really worth it. You're better off sitting still and waiting. But at the end of the day, this is the slowest I've ever seen Uber. It's been really bad. Restaurants are empty. Hotels are empty. It seems like an absolute ghost town out there. And to make things even worse, I could literally smell the red tide from downtown Sarasota, as the red tide has made a return from Naples all the way up to the mouth of Tampa Bay. There's a few spots where it's in high concentration right now, like right outside of Venice, and in North Naples, it's starting to get in the medium high. So red tide is back in Southwest Florida. So with, I guess the elections are going to play a role into this whole situation as well. But overall, the situation in Florida is dire for the people who actually depend on jobs from tourism. The city is empty. There's literally nobody out here. The red tide is looking like it's starting to show its head, and that's going to scare away a lot of people. Hurricane damage is still everywhere in Florida, especially along the southwest coast. From Tampa all the way down to about Fort Myers, there's still hurricane destruction along the coast, particularly heavy around Venice and Sarasota, and of course the beaches of Clearwater and St. Pete. So people just aren't going to come to these beaches if there's hurricane destruction. Water clarity in the Gulf has been bad as well. Now there's dead fish from the red tide. Who is going to come here under these circumstances? Things are definitely looking bad. I remember a few years ago, things were great. When you would go to downtown in Fort Myers or Sarasota or any of these cities in Southwest Florida, they would be packed. Even on a weeknight, as soon as it got cold up north, people were flocking to Florida. But it seems that the love affair of New Yorkers and people from up north of Florida is really starting to fade away. We pay an exorbitant amount of money to live in this metropolitan area. And we did it because the beaches were amazing, the nightlife was fun, these cities were full of life and energy. But to pay the type of money that we're paying to live here, for this to be a complete ghost town in the season, is definitely disappointing. Now, I don't really know why people aren't flocking to Florida like they used to. There was a lot of promotion and a lot of anticipation that Florida's going to become this fast-growing state. But people have slowly been disenchanted with the state of Florida. A lot of people that came down here realized that home insurance has become ridiculous. Car insurance is ridiculous. Healthcare is absolute garbage. People are really starting to figure out, well, everything that I was telling them from the start. But it was nice to see that for a while, Florida was this thriving and lush place where everybody wanted to be. But back-to-back hurricanes, contamination of the red tide, bad water quality in the Gulf. What else could be wrong in this picture? What else could lead to this beautiful, thriving coastline that Florida was looking like a freaking ghost town? It's very disappointing, but like I said, we pay exorbitant amount of money to live in this area. And if you're paying this kind of money to live somewhere, you kind of have expectations of what to get. And to live in a town that's like this, empty, you might as well move somewhere more affordable. And definitely, I can see that the allure of Florida has been fading away with a lot of people, including ourselves. Now, in the case of me and my wife, it's a little complicated because we grew up down here. All our family lives in Southwest Florida. Our parents are elderly and they live in Southwest Florida, so we're kind of stuck to this area because of our family and friends. And of course, the obligation that we have to our aging parents is keeping us stuck here, but we don't want to be here. Katie and I have long grown out of Florida, and if Florida is this thriving, hip, popping off place, then who wouldn't want to be here? But the vibes have been changing. The homeless population has grown tremendously. The overdose and drugs in this metropolitan area are constantly in your face. It's really like we've kept all of the bad things have got worse and the good things have slowly started to disappear. And it's understandable with the cost of living down here and homeowners insurance, condos. Lawyers have literally been stealing people's houses in Florida. They're making up all these rules just so that they can price people out of their homes. It's starting to become a mess here. Now, when people were pouring into Florida, I was the only YouTuber blowing a red flag telling you guys, hey, this is the state of Florida. There's no jobs. A lot of people, especially the young people, have had to leave the metropolitan area. And they've had to leave because they can't find good paying jobs. And it's like over the last few years, I've noticed that a lot of my Uber passengers, when I start talking to them, are telling me, hey, we're moving to New York, California, Minnesota. We're going to get paid more money and we're going to be better off. And here in Florida, we're just not making enough money. And this has been a reoccurring theme for a lot of people here, having to leave because they simply cannot make enough money. The jobs in Florida really suck. So while all these other YouTubers were making top 10 lists of the best places to live in Florida, and realtors from New York and New Jersey were starting YouTube channels out of Boca and Naples telling everybody they should move to Florida and things are great in Florida, now we start to see a lot of those people have already moved back to their home states or somewhere else, and now they're making videos about how they're glad they got out of Florida. And the whole time there was this one YouTube channel, right, Little Southern Life here, telling you guys, hey, this isn't going to work for these people for too long. And a lot of those people have left. The hype is over and people are moving to other states. And the state of Florida is getting stuck with a lot of problems. Problems that don't seem like they're going to get better. It seems like in Florida, lawyers are literally trying to steal people's houses. Homeowners insurance, issues of HOAs, complications with regulations that old buildings can't keep up with. I've been warning you guys before all this unraveled. Who was telling you, don't buy these old condos in Florida? Hey, if you don't have more than $500,000, don't move to Florida. And even if you have it, watch it slowly shrink if you have it. Like when we moved back to Florida from Alabama, we brought with us over $100,000. We're actually at a negative net worth now, having to finance vehicles and take credit cards out just to buy the groceries. Things have really got bad for us. And that's considering that I have a YouTube channel that makes an unreal amount of money, probably close to $100,000 a year. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. Even that isn't enough to afford living in Florida. And lately, we've even started eating at home and cooking at home because we can't afford to eat out like we used to. In other words, even with measures that we're taking to save money, like not buying enough clothes, not buying food out like we used to, just being more modest with our spending, we are still struggling to keep up because life in Florida continues to get exponentially more difficult. I'm pretty sure we are on track to having the absolute worst tourist season we have ever had. And when I look at the parking lots of like Walmarts and big grocery stores, I notice that there's 20 or 30 cars parked there just about every night. And most of those people are people sleeping in their cars. Just about every single large shopping plaza here has an onslaught of vans. It's starting to look and feel like California. Of course, they have to be a little bit more discreet about it. But I've also noticed in like the last month, a lot of work vehicles, people in their company trucks that are sleeping in their work vehicles. These are people that work for a company, have a good paying job, but they're still sleeping out of their vehicles. So the situation here has definitely gotten dire for a lot of people in Florida. And I'm going to tell you, things are not looking good. It seems like to live here, you need a YouTube channel, 3 jobs, and maybe some other type of invention on the side just to make enough to live. As an Uber driver myself, I have noticed things get from bad to worse. And now it's getting to the point where even if you stick around dangerous neighborhood at night, not even in those areas you can find rides. I remember when I first started Uber driving, if it got bad, you would just head to the bad neighborhoods and you would have a lot of volume of passengers. It's scarier, sketchier situations, but at least they were there. That doesn't even exist anymore. There's just not so much a saturation of drivers, but just a lack of passengers. When I look at the airport, the amount of flights that are coming into Sarasota, it is a fraction of what it should be by now. The economical situation here really is dire. And I've talked to a lot of people in restaurants, like restaurant owners, and they're telling me that their businesses are packed. But no, it's nothing like it used to be. I remember by now, we would have like endless traffic jams. Like if you're trying to go from Lakewood Ranch to, let's say, Lido Key, it would literally take hours to do it because there's so much traffic. Even in rush hour, you can still get across the metro area in less than 45 minutes, showing that there just aren't as many people here as there should be yet. And it's not like I just moved to Florida yesterday. I've lived in Florida for over 25 years. This isn't my first snowbird season, and this is definitely the worst that I've seen so far. I'm a little concerned what the future is going to hold for this area. Now, our apartments where we live, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of vacancy here right now. In fact, you can't even get a parking spot where I live currently because there's actually just too many people here. But I'm starting to think that a lot of people are living here are living like 3 or 4, like a roommate type situation. When I moved to Lakewood Ranch, this was like a rich, old, white people type of place. And it's starting to become kind of like student housing with a lot of people with those student visas. So the demographics of the area have definitely changed, and I'm not against that, but it is noticeable that, it seems like a lot of these apartments used to have this rule where you had to make 3 times the income. They've really gone down to that. It went from like you had to make 3 times the income to live where I live now to 2.5, and I think now they're probably even accepting less than that because simply, when these people from up north started to move here in droves, remember that? Where everybody was moving to Florida. Y'all remember that? Everybody was moving to Florida. Then the rents got to where like you had to make 3 times the rent, and a lot of people kind of went homeless or had to move away because all these apartments were requiring 3 times the rent. Means if the rent's $2,000, you had to make at least $6,000 to qualify. Well, those requirements are starting to go away because the income analytics have dropped for people. Now it's more like roommate situations, and people are not making that kind of money anymore. So now that the big income earners are leaving the state of Florida, the locals are stuck with local incomes, local prices that were adjusted to all these people that came here, and there doesn't seem to be a correction of those prices. So now we're stuck with the same crappy salaries, the same lack of jobs and opportunity, but the cost as if this was a demanding place to be. Things have really got difficult in Florida. Me and Katie would have definitely considered leaving by now, except for the fact that we have the obligation to our parents. But if things continue to get worse economically here in Florida, I wouldn't doubt that even that wouldn't be enough to hold us back here. After all, a few years ago when we moved to Alabama, we left because we just couldn't make enough money. And our situation improved. We had a lot of money from the house sale, but that money's dried up. And now we're living paycheck to paycheck. And the cost of living here means that even eating at home, we're still looking at our finances every month, and this crap is not adding up. And that's even with an incredible YouTube income and the fact I'm hustling Uber on the side. None of that's enough to live here because there just isn't viable ways to make it. I can't even imagine for people who don't have a YouTube channel the size of mine. It's a difficult situation for a lot of people. Economically, things are looking tough in Florida, and as you can see, Sarasota is practically a ghost town. Long gone are the YouTubers from New York talking about how everybody should move to Florida. I think by now everybody's figured out that living here can be quite a freaking nightmare. Unfortunately, some of us can't just go back to New York. Our family and everything we love is here, and we have to try to make this work however we can, and that just makes it even more frustrating. But since the beaches got destroyed by hurricanes and all the other things that have been happening here lately, and continuing the state to become even crazier every single day, especially on the legislative level, every year becomes more difficult and more obscene. It just feels like this is turning into a completely weird, strange place. It really makes you wonder if it's worth staying in Florida. We'll see how this tourist season changes for the better or for the worse, but if it remains like this, it definitely is not an incentive for us to want to stay in this metropolitan area. And I've come to love the place and the people here, and I really do love the place. But we've always wondered, is there something better out there for us? Because this does not make freaking sense. And again, we're comfortable. We're not going to go hungry anytime soon. We're doing okay. But it is challenging nonetheless.